The movie opens with a desk with pictures spread all over it. One in particular, of a dark-haired woman inside a lake with her back turned to the photographer, is being held by someone. The person holding the picture softly caresses it while a flashback of a man in a boat and a woman swimming in a large lake shows. It's fall. The lake is surrounded by mountains and trees with orange leaves. The woman swimming is Hannah Miles, a columnist for a newspaper in a small town in Maine, and the man is her husband Hunter, a famous singer for an indie rock band. Hannah is a pretty woman, with long, dark hair and dark brown eyes. Presently, she resides in a red cabin in the woods isolated from civilization with only her 2 dogs for company. Hunter has passed away and left Hannah with only memories of their incredible lives together. One memory in particular is that day in the lake, and Hannah has decided to write about it in her column. The morning she went swimming, Hunter offered her a deal that he would clean up the basement if she swam all across the lake. She did it because the basement was in terrible need of cleaning and swimming across such a huge lake was challenging. She writes that when you reach the middle, it feels like it's never going to end. The only reason she didn't give up was because Hunter was with her, supporting her until she reached the other side. That same day, while she was swimming to reach her goal, Hunter thought about the last song on his album. The song is about life and death, and it plays in the background while Hannah writes. Hannah goes on to write that the first time they visited the lake, which is in their hometown, Hunter fell in love with it. He decided that it was there that he was going to write his songs and raise a big family with her. It was a beautiful plan, and Hunter wrote really good songs while living there, but now Hannah is alone. She stops writing and sighs as she remembers her sad reality. Living in the middle of the woods, only her and her 2 dogs, without her lifelong partner. In the following scene, Hannah is driving an old pickup truck towards the cemetery. The way is very scenic with pine woods on each side of the road, and the beautiful lake shining under the winter sun. When she arrives at the cemetery, a small group of people are leaving. They went there to visit Hunter's grave and to leave gifts and letters in respect to him. Hannah is there to take it all with her. She finds a bottle of whiskey, a strange necklace, a letter and even a cigarette. After putting everything in her bag, she sits under a tree right in front of Hunter's grave to read a book. Before she can even open the book, a noisy sound breaks the peace and quiet of the cemetery. Hannah turns to look and sees a man parking a motorcycle. She sarcastically mutters to herself that the grave is popular that day and packs her things to leave. The man coming towards Hunter's grave is wearing a leather jacket and dark pants. He is quite handsome with dark hair and a full beard. Hannah smiles as she observes the man take a leather-bound book from his jacket. It's probably another gift for Hunter. She quietly leaves and goes to a bookstore downtown. The bookstore's owner, Upton, is also Hannah's boss at the newspaper. Hannah tells him that she's ready to go back to writing the column, but the man has already assigned the job to another person. He states that he's tired of Hannah's procrastination, but Hannah insists that he gives her another opportunity. Upton ends up relenting and offering her an interview with an 88-year-old woman named Esther Greeley. Hannah also asks for the biographies that she ordered because she wants to learn more about the genre. Upton hands about 6 books to her and she leaves with a pile of books and a happy smile on her face. When she arrives back home, she puts the gifts Hunter received away. She has a collection of odd objects and many bottles of whiskey stored from the graveyard's gifts. After doing that, she goes on a walk with her dogs while listening to her voice messages. They are all from a man named Andrew McCabe who is trying to get an interview with her to talk about Hunter. He mentions that he's a scholar, writer and a professor at an university, specialized in pop culture and American studies. Before he can continue talking about his many achievements in life, Hannah turns the message off. Despite thinking he's annoying, when she returns home, instead of working, she decides to do some research about Andrew McCabe. While she reads his accomplishments, she makes sarcastic comments to herself about him being a stalker. Someone knocks on her door in the middle of her research. A man walks in her house wearing safety apparel and holding a nest in his arms. The man is Curtis, and he has a huge crush on Hannah. He tells her that he saw the bird's nest with a chick inside and decided to bring it to her so that she could take care of it. Hannah says that she can't because she has to work, but Curtis insists. The scene cuts to them having a passionate moment in Hannah's kitchen, when her answering machine starts loudly playing all her messages, including one from her mother. At first, Hannah tries to ignore the message, but when her mother talks about a man from New York who keeps pestering her to talk about Hunter, she pushes Curtis away to answer the phone. Her mother informs her that the man is a professor at an university, and she gives her the address of the motel he's staying at in her hometown. Hannah leaves Curtis hanging and jumps in her car to go after the man. When she arrives at the motel, she repeatedly knocks on his room's door, but he doesn't answer. She spies through the window and sees a leather-bound journal with her husband's name written on its cover. Curious, she opens the windows and steals the journal. Hannah goes to Upton's bookstore and frantically tells him that there is a celebrity hunter after her and asks him to help her crush him. She's so nervous that she doesn't notice the man sitting in front of Upton with his back to her. When she finishes speaking, the man turns and startles Hannah. It's the same man from the cemetery. Upton introduces him to her as Andrew McCabe and explains that he teaches at a university. Hannah gets defensive and asks Andrew if he wants a restraining order or to wait for a libel suit. Andrew's confused with Hannah's angry attitude, but she tells him that she's tired of parasites like him dragging her husband's name through the mud. Andrew smirks and replies that she's barking at the wrong tree because that's not his objective. He's not a journalist searching for an interview with the widow of a famous rock star. He's actually writing a book about music and he wants Hunter to be its soul. Hannah doesn't think that's flattering. She's tired of people trying to dissect her husband. She tells Andrew that her Hunter was a person, and that every song he ever wrote and everything he ever touched belongs to her. A dumbfounded Andrew watches the pretty brunette storming out of the bookstore, but before she leaves, he asks if that crazy widow routine works on people. Hannah turns to him with a look of disbelief, and he apologizes. He tries again to change her mind by saying how much he respects Hunter's work when Hannah takes his journal out of her jacket and starts ripping the pages apart. She goes out of the bookstore throwing paper balls all over while Andrew yells at her and tries to collect the pages of his precious work. Hannah leaves with the rest of the journal and Andrew stands in the middle of the street, feeling lost. Upton explains that of all the stages of grief, Hannah is going through vandalism. Later on, Hannah is at home reading Andrew's journal to her dogs. At first look, she thinks it's ridiculous, but as she continues reading out loud, she gets immersed in his words about Hunter. It's so good that she spends the rest of the afternoon reading it while listening to Hunter's music. Andrew leaves her a message saying that he thought after so many years, she would be okay to talk about Hunter. That he's sorry and that Hunter's work means a lot to him. He tells her he will be at a diner during dinner and leaves it up to her to meet him or not. Hannah feels conflicted. She liked Andrew's work about Hunter. At the same time, it's hard to talk about him like that to a stranger. She makes up her mind and goes to the diner with Andrew's journal. He's already there eating when she arrives and throws the journal on the table. She tells him that she decided that she'll listen to him. But that's all. Andrew tells her that he wants to make her husband immortal, that he thinks it's unfair that his music is being buried in an avalanche of cheesy singles, and that he wants the responsibility to raise him up again. Hannah is still not completely convinced about him. When Andrew says he wants to ask her some questions while recording it, she takes out her own recorder and starts firing up questions about him. She asks him about his book, and he explains that it's not a gossip book, but a book about artists, poets, and musicians that couldn't pass through their youth. He thinks it's a wildly romantic book, and that Hunter is the main character to be explored. As he talks about her husband with such reverence, Hannah softens a bit. Putting her record away, she snarkily remarks that she's not going to worry because no one is going to read the book. Then, she opens herself for his questions, though maintaining a defensive position. The first thing he asks is how a man who was born in a big city, the drummer in a punk band, decided to drop everything to stay in the countryside. Hannah explains that Hunter loved Maine. Andrew seems skeptical and asks if he really loved the city or if he only loved her, since it's her hometown they were living in. It's the wrong kind of question. Hannah sarcastically replies that everything is her fault, and when the waiter appears, she stands up to leave. Andrew pleads for her to wait and asks another question. This time he asks how a man who produced the perfect album from the woods of Maine died before people could even get to know him better. He asks how he died. Hannah scoffs in disbelief of his audacity and leaves. Andrew goes after her to try and make her stay, but Hannah angrily tells him that it doesn't matter if he has good taste in music because any monument that is built for Hunter, she'll be the one laying the bricks. Before she leaves for good, Andrew tells her he's really sorry that she wants to let Hunter slip away for good. Hannah replies that she hopes he gets rich or whatever it is that he wants with this book. Then she closes her truck's door and tries to leave. Andrew continues to say that she's condemning a genius to obscurity, but Hannah says that she's already writing his biography. That surprises Andrew. He tries to ask her more questions, but she leaves him in the dust. Back in his place in New York, Andrew complains about Hannah to his friends. He's afraid that she's not going to let him write about Hunter at all, and it's upsetting to him. He's tired of all the dissertations written about famous musicians, and thinks that Hunter is uncharted territory that he's dying to explore. His girlfriend Finley, a music scout, tells him to come to work with her because she knows bands that are much more cutting edge than Hunter. For Andrew, though, not being cutting edge is what attracts him to Hunter so much. He thinks Hunter is timeless. Moving on to Hannah, she is more inspired than ever to write about Hunter. While Andrew is freaking out about his wasted opportunity, Hannah spends her days writing, playing the piano, and meeting with Curtis in her free time. When she finishes writing the intro, the first chapter, and the epilogue, she hands a copy to Upton so he can give her some feedback. He thinks there are some things that are interesting, but it's not all she's capable of writing. Hannah almost cries when he tells her that what she wrote is like a pig lost in the woods. Upton tells her that she's attempting the impossible and that it is okay to ask for help. He suggests that she works with Andrew, but she fiercely says she never will. At home, Hannah drinks her sorrows and throws her manuscript away. The following day, all her inspiration goes down the drain. Even playing the piano isn't exciting for her. She feels lost. With time in her hands to think, she decides to call Andrew. He is in the middle of a lecture when his phone rings with an unknown number. He doesn't answer it and forgets someone called. When he's about to leave with Finley for a dinner date, Hannah calls again. She tells him that though Hunter would have kicked his ass for many reasons, he would have respected his take on his songs. So after much thought, she decided to let go of her first impressions and to work with him, though not on his book. She asks if he has ever written a biography. Andrew wonders if she's a crazy person, and Hannah snaps that she probably is since she thinks he has half a brain. Swallowing her pride, she confesses she needs his help in writing the biography. Andrew retorts that he already has a contract from a publisher and a publication date, and asks what she has to offer him. Hannah replies that she has the truth of the last 10 years of Hunter's life and she can give access to all his stuff, even his sheet music and drafts of his lyrics. Andrew misunderstands that she wants him to write Hunter's biography, but Hannah clarifies that they are going to write it together. When Andrew explains that he already has an advance in terms of money, she tells him that she can add $40,000 from Hunter's insurance. Andrew and Finley are shocked because it's way above what he currently has to publish his book, and while they discuss if he should ask for more, Hannah ends up raising the amount to $50,000. Andrew and Finley do a happy dance in silence while Hannah nervously waits for his answer. Andrew finally tells her that she bought herself a typist. Hannah is happy that she managed to convince him, and they arrange their meetings for the spring break. She even offers him a guest room in her house so he doesn't need to stay in a motel. Some time later, Andrew arrives in Maine again during a snowstorm. He gets to Hannah's house late at night, and when they meet again, it's awkward. Hannah offers him something to drink while Andrew complains about the road and the snow blocking his sight. Hannah snidely comments that city people have a "don't mess with me" vibe, but they are spineless cowards. Andrew feels the jab, but chooses to keep quiet. After all, Hannah is his new employer. Hannah asks if he wants some tea for the cold, and he dramatically says that his drink is fine, that he will build a cocoon of blankets in his room and call his girlfriend to let her know he's all right. Then, come next morning, he will rise again and be ready to dive into his new job. He will maybe drink her tea and hopefully forget that she called him a spineless coward. The following morning, Andrew wakes at the crack of dawn to one of Hannah's dogs snoring in his ear. Both her dogs are sleeping with him on the bed, and when he tries to get up, one of them growls and farts on his face. Later on, he meets Hannah in her writing space. He asks what she has already written, and she replies that she only has a bunch of random facts about Hunter that she can't forget. Andrew asks if Hunter kept a journal, but he didn't. Hannah starts saying that she has some interviews that he can read, but Andrew interrupts her and explains that he can't begin a story without knowing how it ends. Hannah tells him the story of the day she found out Hunter died. He went hiking on the mountains, something he was used to doing, when he fell down from the face of the mountain. Hannah was worried about him because he was supposed to be home and went after him. She found his car on the road and immediately called the police. A search party was sent and they found him in a shallow ravine in the middle of the woods. Andrew gives his condolences and Hannah explains that his death is the least interesting thing about him. That's why she doesn't talk about it much. She hands him her notes about Hunter and Andrew tells her that it may be interesting for him to do the same path that Hunter did the day of his death. Hannah, already upset that she had to talk about something so traumatic, says that maybe her father will take him there during Easter. Andrew asks if her parents will share the guest bedroom with him and Hannah explains that they reside in town and have a tradition of making a big Easter dinner. Andrew excitedly replies that family gatherings are his bread and butter. Moving on, Andrew starts going through Hannah's notes. Sometimes she has to explain some excerpts, but overall she doesn't disturb him. He takes pictures of the gifts Hunter's fans leave for him, and of parts of the house that Hunter probably used the most, like the piano in the living room. Days go by with them in this routine. One evening, Andrew finds the police report of Hunter's accident, and it seemed he hurt his head badly. One day, Hannah walks home to find Andrew playing Hunter's guitar. He tells her that it's out of tune and that he's going to fix it. Hannah informs him that she's going to interview someone, and he asks if it's a new talent that she's met. She explains that she's a freelance writer for the local paper and writes community portraits. Andrew replies that it's sweet and Hannah smiles as if he's crazy. The minute Hannah leaves, Andrew starts snooping around the house under her dog's judging eyes. While she's interviewing Esther Greeley, Andrew finds a violin case containing all of Hunter's memorabilia, including bullets and letters. Hannah arrives just as he's checking it out and he quickly has to hide everything again. He goes outside to call her dogs after locking them out, and ends up locking himself out. In his rush to go after the dogs, he slips on a patch of melting snow and falls down hard on the wet ground. He has no time to feel the pain because Hannah is wondering what her dogs were doing outside. Andrew is wet and dirty when he approaches Hannah. He pretends that he locked himself out while walking the dogs, and Hannah makes a sarcastic comment about him being a Neanderthal. Then, she lights the fire and makes him some tea so that he doesn't freeze. While sitting in front of the fire drinking tea, Hannah tells Andrew that Hunter was also prone to bone chills and had to wear 3 sets of pants to keep the cold away. She fondly tells him that they had prepared a spring wedding, but a foot of snow fell the day before their wedding. Then, Hunter told her to put her snowshoes on and they got married on top of Bald Mountain. Hannah smiles while telling the story and says that Hunter commented that the whole world was wearing a wedding dress that day because of the snow, and she decided to not wear white, but magenta. Andrew jokingly says that if she wore white, she would be camouflaged. It's a pretty cozy moment, and they even laugh together before the power runs out and Curtis invades Hannah's house. He doesn't notice that Andrew is there, and suggestively tells Hannah that they are going to have to ride this one out the whole night. He starts complimenting Hannah's appearance when a very uncomfortable Andrew decides to make himself visible. Curtis almost has a heart attack when a man suddenly appears right next to Hannah. She introduces Andrew as her college friend. When they shake hands, Curtis almost breaks Andrews. Curtis hands Hannah some venison and suggests she cooks it. Hannah then realizes that he wants to stay there with her and Andrew. The dinner is awkward and silent. It's obvious that Curtis is jealous and suspicious of Andrew. Even though he has no serious relationship with Hannah, he and Andrew could not be more different. Curtis talks about hunting, but Andrew is a city man. He is also very sarcastic and tells Curtis that when he's in the city and runs out of food, he takes his gun, goes to a park and hunts a beaver. Curtis doesn't notice that he's messing with him and tells Andrew that he would go for the raccoon first. Andrew asks him what he does for fun, and he suggestively waggles his eyebrows. Hannah decides to intervene before the man says anything inappropriate about her or their relationship, and asks them if they want ice cream. Curtis surprisingly declines and tells her he has to go because he works early, and adds he was happy to meet her smart pants friend. Before he leaves, he tries to ask Hannah on a date, but she subtly rejects him by thanking him for being a good neighbor. As soon as he leaves, Andrew gives a pointed look to Hannah, and she shakes her head at him. He says that it's only rare for him to dine with the executed and executioner, and Hannah defensively replies that he doesn't know her well enough to give her a hard time about her relationship with Curtis. She throws him a sleeping bag and they go to sleep side by side in front of the fire. The whole time Andrew passive-aggressively talks about Curtis, about how good it is that she's moving on to a man like him, a thoroughbred, that she even might fall in love again. Hannah tries to defend herself by saying that she has known Curtis since high school, and that he's a good person and awesome in bed. Before they go to sleep, Andrew says that the dinner was the weirdest thing he has ever dealt with in his life. Hannah sarcastically says you're welcome. When Andrew closes his eyes to sleep, Hannah covertly stares at him for a moment. Then, when she closes her eyes, Andrew stares at her. It's Easter time and they go to Hannah's parents' house for dinner. While driving, Hannah listens to Andrew make fun of her parents' tradition with his girlfriend, and tells him that he should go back. Andrew denies it by saying that he's hungry, but what he really wants is to talk to her parents to see if he can discover anything else from them about Hunter. Hannah's whole family is there, even her siblings. She tells them that she brought a friend, and at first they think it's a woman. But when Hannah informs them that it's a man, they all share looks. It's the first time Hannah has brought a man to her parents since her husband passed, so it's a surprise. Hannah insists it's only a friend and explains that he's there doing research on real estate. She doesn't tell them that the research is to write a book about her husband. When Andrew knocks on the door after finishing the call with Finley, they all go there to answer it. Hannah's mother, Linda, hugs him as if she has known him for years. Linda introduces the rest of the family, and when it comes to Hannah's father, Bruce, he's more laid back with Andrew. Linda asks her other daughter to give him a tour of the house, and when he leaves, she tells Hannah she's really happy that she brought him. Hannah reinforces that he's just a friend and that after Easter, he'll finish his job and leave. Linda comforts her as if she's being rejected by Andrew, which Hannah finds weird. While on the tour around the house, Hannah's sister shows Andrew the wall of fame where all their prizes and accomplishments are on display. There, Andrew finds out that not only Hannah already published a book of poems, she's also a PhD in Brown, an Ivy League university. He's shocked because he would never have thought that she's so accomplished. Not with her simple, bucolic lifestyle. During dinner, Andrew calls Hannah a doctor, something she finds strange. Her father prays, thanking nature and nurture for the meal, and Linda adds Andrew in the middle, thanking him for his presence. When they start eating, Bruce asks questions about real estate that Andrew has no idea how to answer. He shares a confused look with Hannah and she begs him with her eyes for him to go with it. She then explains to her family that he works in another branch of real estate, and that it's better if they don't talk about work during dinner. Andrew, though, decides that he wants to talk about it and says that he loves to talk about work all the time. Linda asks how he got into real estate, and Andrew's answer is terrible. Hannah interrupts and says the truth, that he's a professor of American studies and he's doing research about Hunter. Linda doesn't look happy at all, because she was hoping Hannah was moving on from Hunter, but it was quite the opposite. Hannah goes on to say that she hired him to write a biography about Hunter, and Linda asks if there's nothing going on between her and Andrew. Hannah emphatically denies it and informs her mother that Andrew has a girlfriend. The mood sours in a second. Linda turns her attention to Andrew and says that he's sitting at her table and eating her food while lying to her face. Andrew tells them that he's just the help and that he wasn't informed that the book was a secret. He adds that he's hoping they will let him interview them for what he thinks will be a beautiful book. Linda grabs her plate and leaves the table using the excuse that her food got cold. The rest of dinner is silent and awkward, and after it, Andrew offers Linda some help in the kitchen, but she denies it, He tries talking to her, but the happy-go-lucky old lady is suddenly cold as an ice cube. It gets worse when he not so subtly asks her if she was a fan of Hunter's music. Linda snidely tells him that she doesn't support the project. Andrew goes to leave, but she asks him to stay. After sighing out loud, she explains that Hannah will never break the cycle of keeping Hunter around. Andrew tries to defend Hannah by saying that maybe that's her way of getting closure, but Linda disagrees. Andrew tries again and says that Hannah cares about his legacy, and Linda wonders if the world cares so much about the 12 songs that he wrote. Andrew replies that she would be surprised. Linda gets emotional and asks what's in it for him, because Hunter was a son to her, and using him as a career booster is not nice. Andrew apologizes and asks what Hunter was like. Linda emotionally says that he had some darkness in him, but he was one of a kind, and that Hannah felt lucky to be with him. Now, she doesn't know how to move on with her life without Hunter at her side. When they return home, Hannah gives Andrew a chocolate bunny for his effort at her parents' house. Although it was a weird dinner, it was very fruitful and confusing to Andrew. He's learned a bit more about Hunter, but he's lost when it comes to Hannah. So he asks her why she wants to write the book. Hannah stays silent for a moment before answering that she used to have a lot of love in her arsenal, but she never got to spend it. She turns to leave the room, but Andrew stops her by saying that he liked her family. Hannah is doubtful. The following day, Bruce takes Andrew hiking like Hannah suggested. Bruce doesn't speak much, even though Andrew keeps trying to make small talk. Meanwhile, Hannah is with Linda, and Linda brought a bunch of gardening tools and seeds to Hannah so that she can help her plant a new future. Andrew is having a lot of difficulties in the hike, while for Bruce it's like a walk in the park. Bruce tells Andrew that they still have a long and hard way to go to the top of the mountain, but if he'd rather, they could call it off and pay their respects right where they are. Andrew is confused until he realizes they finally reached the place where Hunter died, and it wasn't on top of the mountain like Hannah said. Bruce shows the place where he might have fallen, and says that he imagines that he lost his footing and tumbled down. Andrew tells him that they both know he didn't lose his footing. He asks Bruce if he didn't think Hunter was a tortured guy, but Bruce asks him a question in turn. He questions who he thinks he is to talk like that about a person he didn't even know. Andrew arrogantly says that he has studied men like Hunter for years, and that kind of death is pretty textbook. He also asks if it never occurred to them that he might have ended it all himself. Bruce gets angry and says that no, it never occurred to them. He thanks Andrew for being so wise and teaching a bunch of ignorant people how it is. While Linda teaches Hannah how to plant the seeds, she says that every year is a milestone, and that when you're old, there are only 2 milestones, grandchildren or death. She tells Hannah that she's impatient because she's getting older and doesn't want to die without knowing her grandchildren. Hannah replies that she used to think she wanted children, but now she just wants llamas. Her mother is relentless and suggests Hannah find someone on the internet and cuts her hair. She also asks Hannah to take a break from her writing project, call some of her old friends and go have fun. Hannah leaves her mother alone, still talking about how she needs a little perking up. After a really bad confrontation with Bruce, Andrew stomps around town towards a coffee shop, but it's closed. He gets frustrated that things close so early in small towns, and as he's ranting to himself, Curtis appears. He tells Andrew that, like he said during dinner, people who depend on others always end up forsaken. Andrew, already upset with the way his day went, snidely asks if Curtis is there to discuss food chains again. Instead of talking about that, Curtis says that Hannah is a real Maine girl, and that she likes a real man that smells like pine resin, not French perfume. Andrew replies that he has no claim on her and that if they procreate, they might even out the gene pool. He tries to leave, but Curtis stops him. He says that no one in town wants to see her going with a flatlander like Andrew, and that he better leave town. Luckily for Andrew, Upton appears to save his day and tells Curtis to have manners. Curtis asks Andrew to beat it, and then, before he leaves, he paints Andrew's shoes yellow with a paint sprayer. Upton asks if Andrew is okay, and he sarcastically says he is fine working everybody through their issues. Back at Hannah's house, Hannah asks Andrew if Curtis peed on him after their confrontation. She thinks it was kind of sweet of him, but Andrew completely disagrees. It all adds to his frustration and unfamiliarity with the small town. He rants to Hannah that he's tired of the forest and all the animals in it, and Hannah interrupts him and says that he can leave anytime he wants because he's not being held hostage. Andrew gets even more upset and asks if Hannah can't be a girl for a second and only comforts him. Hannah jokingly comforts him and he thanks her. He tells her that he would kill to have a mediocre meal in an overpriced restaurant, and Hannah suggests a place. They go eat and Andrew orders lobster. Hannah says she can't believe that on the day they actually go out to eat at a nice place, he orders the easiest thing to make on the menu. While they are talking about the food, a man is staring at them and Andrew thinks he's either interested in him or Hannah. She explains that in small towns it's common for people to be in each other's business, and that everyone is expecting her to be moving on from her husband. Andrew wonders if she never wanted to move to New York or another big city, and Hannah explains that it isn't easy to give up her lifestyle. It's who she is. She confesses that she feels like there's always something looming on her that prevents her from seeing around it. She also admits that she's probably depressed, but Andrew disagrees with her. He thinks that she's just grieving, and that it's normal. That it's not like she's waking up at noon and or Skyping with her therapist during her work breaks like he and half his colleagues do. Hannah asks what he's so depressed about, and Andrew replies that he has tons of things, like how most of his students have nothing in their heads or the fact that his father passed away too early. He explains that the smallest things can set him off, like the fall of light through the window or a stack of old newspapers. He then confesses that his father when he was just a kid, which is surprising to Hannah. Andrew says that he thought he knew his father, but when he suddenly it was a surprise. The mood in the dinner starts to get darker and Andrew starts to drink more. Hannah says that it's terrible that his father did that, and Andrew agrees, though he explains that it was a long time ago and his medication helps with that. Hannah is again surprised that he's medicated, and he says that at the moment he isn't, but that if he spends more time in Maine, he will certainly need them again. His joke breaks the heavy moment. A man suddenly appears right next to him and asks if Hannah wants to dance. She accepts it. Andrew goes dancing too, and they have a good time, laughing and enjoying themselves. After dinner, they are in the car watching a bear, something that Andrew finds fascinating. When Hannah says that it's weird how people spend their whole lives trying not to die, and when something terrible happens to someone they love, they wish it happened to them instead. Andrew understands she's talking about Hunter, and tells her he's glad that it wasn't her. Hannah self-deprecatingly says that no one would pay him $40,000 to write her biography. Andrew jokingly replies that he thought it was $50,000. They go home and Hannah asks if he's up for something, and he agrees. Hannah surprises him by turning on the lights of a cabin close to her house that he had no idea existed. The cabin belonged to Hunter, and it was the place where he spent the most time writing and composing his songs. Andrew is speechless. It was exactly what he wanted to get to know Hunter on a deeper level, and Hannah handed it to him. The cabin is a mess of trinkets, instruments, paintings, and songs written on the walls. He profusely thanks Hannah for letting him in, and she replies that she will erase his brain later. Andrew excitedly goes through Hunter's music stuff while Hannah watches. He finds something that she didn't know how to use amidst Hunter's vinyls, a 4-track recorder that is still plugged in. When Hannah understands what it is, she tries to prevent Andrew from pressing play, but it is too late. Hunter's voice starts playing in the cabin, singing a song about ending things before it's his time. Hannah presses stop and asks Andrew to wait at the house for her. Andrew asks what song that is, and she says she doesn't know. She asks him again to go back to the house, and this time he listens. Alone, Hannah presses rewind and listens to the song again. Hunter is singing about a place in the mountains where he went to lose himself to time, and where he wondered if there is more than flesh and bone. He asks his love for forgiveness because he couldn't wait to go. As she listens, she laughs and cries at the same time. It's almost as if she got the closure she needed all this time, to know for sure what happened to Hunter, and the song is her definite answer. In the house, Andrew is freaking out. He calls Finley and tells him there is an unreleased song from Hunter. He's desperate and afraid that Hannah is ripping the song apart and that it will never see the light of day. The following morning, Finley suddenly appears at Hannah's house, surprising Andrew. He introduces her to Hannah, and Finley hugs her as if they were best friends. She also gives her condolences in the name of the music industry for the loss of her husband. Hannah thanks her and leaves to give them some time alone. Unbeknownst to Hannah, there is a reason for Finley to be there. While she leaves to go into town, they go to the cabin in the woods and listen to Hunter's song. In the end of the song, there's a message from Hunter to Hannah asking her for forgiveness, and that he should have told her. He also says he loves her. Meanwhile, Hannah is hiking by herself. Andrew sends her a message saying that he and Finley went to the town fair that her mother invited him to, and that he hopes to see her there. The sun is going down when Hannah reaches the top of the mountain, the same place where she got married to Hunter. Andrew thinks it's strange that she didn't show up at the fair and asks her sister where she is, and her sister informs her that she usually didn't go because it happened on her wedding anniversary. Andrew had no idea that it was such an important day, and he feels bad that Hannah spent it alone. Finley is drunk and he takes her home. She passes out as soon as she gets to the bed. Alone at the house, Andrew sees through the window that the lights in the cabin were on. He goes there and sees Hannah sleeping on the sofa, holding Hunter's recorder. He smiles softly and puts a blanket on her. Then, he whispers a happy anniversary to her and caresses her hair. When he pulls back, Hannah asks what he thought of the song. Andrew pretends he doesn't know what she's talking about, but Hannah informs him that he forgot to rewind. Andrew feels chastised, but Hannah reassures him that she doesn't blame him. She asks again what his opinion was, and he replies that it was beautiful and incredibly sad. Hannah disagrees that it's sad and asks what he thinks she should do with it. Bashfully, he replies that if you love somebody, you set them free. They joke about who said that cliché phrase and break the somber mood a bit. Andrew holds her hand and tells her with all the honesty in the world that he thought Hunter was very lucky. Hannah smiles and says he was lucky, until he was profoundly unlucky. She cries a little and Andrew says he understands her. All her uncertainty of how and why she lost him. Hannah gets confused by what he's talking about, and Andrew replies that Hunter doesn't deserve her undying loyalty because he couldn't bear the weight, so he put it on her. that he traded her for some poetic notion of immortality. Hannah denies it, and it's obvious that she doesn't really get the meaning of the song Hunter wrote. She still thinks he passed because of an accident, but Andrew takes her colored glasses off. He tells her that it's all in the lyrics, and explains to her that Hunter was basically apologizing for giving up in the song. Hannah starts crying in disbelief. She asks him if all this time he had just been gathering evidence to his theory that Hunter. Andrew denies it, but now Hannah is on a warpath. She asks him whose loss of life he's trying to figure out, Hunter's or his dad's. Andrew gets defensive and tries to make her understand that it's all in the lyrics, but Hannah pulls the rug from under him by saying that the lyrics mean nothing because she was the one to write it. She explains to him that it's a poem that she wrote, making a joke about being intimate on top of a mountain. She tells him that Hunter probably recorded it as a surprise and that lying on the snow doesn't mean bury me. Andrew is shook. Hannah goes on to tell him that he's the one obsessed with death, and that Hunter was obsessed with life. To end their conversation and their relationship, she tells Andrew to go back to New York. Andrew leaves without saying another word. In the morning, he and Finley go back to New York without even saying goodbye. Hannah locks herself up in her bedroom and waits for them to go. Andrew tries to catch her attention by throwing snowballs on her window, but she doesn't look at him, even though she hears it and cries to herself. Andrew leaves Maine a changed person. He goes straight back home after dropping Finley off. He looks lost and sad, which is not a good combination for a person who has depression. The first thing he does is to grab the leather-bound journal that had Hunter's name on it and type it. He takes Finley's picture off his mural before he starts writing. Hannah locks Hunter's cabin again and goes have dinner with her family. A couple of days later, while she's at the cemetery, a girl appears and asks her if she knows where Hunter Miles is buried. She points to his graveyard and watches as the girl puts her flowers on the ground. Surprisingly, the girl turns to her and asks if she ever heard his song Sweet Spring, and Hannah nods. She sees the girl excitedly talking about Hunter's music and on a whim, asks for her email address. When the confused girl asks why, Hannah says that she has a song for her and that she can share it around if she likes it. Then, she leaves the cemetery. Moving on, she's doing an interview with a young man for the paper when he asks her out. Hannah laughs out loud and leaves. When she goes back home, there's a gift in her living room for her. When she opens it, there's a recorder and a letter saying to play it. She looks afraid of what is going to come out of it, but she plays it anyway. It's Andrew telling her to forgive him for thinking brilliance comes with torture and that he wrote a couple of chapters from Hunter's biography. He asks her to read it right away because he's waiting for her at Upton's bookstore. He says he'll be reading Anna Karenina. Hannah starts reading the chapters and she loves it. After some time, she goes to Upton's bookstore to meet Andrew. He's reading Anna Karenina as he said on the recorder, and when he sees her, he raises his hands and wonders if she came with a peace pipe or bearing a musket. Hannah asks if no one ever told him no before. Andrew answers that not as frequently or emphatically as she had. She tells him that he just dropped a grenade on her lap and that she doesn't know what to say. He also doesn't know what he wants her to say. He says he just likes it when she says things. Hannah finally cracks a smile and invites him to look at some ice. Andrew tries to stifle his excitement and says that cold water is his favorite thing in the world. They go to the lake where Hannah swam on a cozy afternoon during fall because she was challenged by Hunter. It's completely frozen in winter, but still very beautiful. To break the ice, Andrew mentions Hunter's lost song that has millions of views on YouTube and jokes that it's not bad for Hannah's first song. Hannah wonders how pissed Finley is, and Andrew answers he wouldn't know because they broke up. Hannah changes subject and says that she wished he could see the lake during summer. They hear whale sounds under the water, and Andrew freaks out while Hannah cracks jokes about the haunting sound. She confesses to him that she loves seeing the seasons change, the winter's cold snow giving place to mud that will flourish again under the sun. It gives her hope. Andrew stares at her for a moment and asks if she feels that. Hannah replies that she wants to. He asks if he can kiss her and Hannah replies that she swam across that entire lake before, and that in the middle, it feels like it will never end. Andrew tells her that she made it, and Hannah says that she did. Andrew asks her again if he can kiss her and Hannah says no. She turns around, crying, but before she can walk too far, she comes back and finally kisses him. They go back to her house and get intimate. For Hannah, it's the first time since she lost Hunter that she opens herself up like she did with Andrew. Next morning, Andrew brings her breakfast in bed. He hugs her and starts flirting with her, but Hannah starts crying. Andrew comforts her and says that Hunter won't want her to be a puddle of tears for the rest of her life. Hannah moves away from his arms and tells him that he doesn't get to say that to her. Andrew confusedly asks why not, and Hannah quietly answers that it's a conflict of interests for him. Andrew accepts her answer, but at the same time, it frustrates him. He asks how their relationship is supposed to work and Hannah shrugs. He steps away from her and says he's competing with a saint. He points out that his studio is a shrine and that there is only his album on her iPod. Hannah continues to cry as he says that there is a difference between grief and worship. She asks him to stop talking and Andrew resentfully says he fell for it. Hannah doesn't understand and tells him that she paid everything she had promised, but Andrew doesn't care about the money. He tells her to take it all back. She cries that she put him up and even slept with him, and Andrew interrupts to say that he's rescuing her. He frustratedly points out that he wrote the book so that she didn't have to. Hannah retorts that the book isn't enough to end her grief, and Andrew says that he knows that Hunter was an amazing person, but that all he sees is the girl he wrote his songs about and that he loves her. Hannah stares at him for a moment, and another tear falls from her eye when she says that she loves the man who wrote the songs. Andrew can't believe that he dropped everything off to go there and confess his love for her, only to be rejected for the memory of a man. And though his death and sadness is a part of his own life, he doesn't understand Hannah's grief, the pain that she carries around because she didn't get to say goodbye to the love of her life, that he's a constant memory for her, to the point that she can only listen to his songs or write about him. Andrew can't understand Hannah, and at the same time, he also carries the grief and questions why his father. Death is a constant in his life, and the life Hannah lived with Hunter is a constant in hers. Hannah leaves the house and goes on a ride to calm herself. Andrew hurriedly puts his clothes back on and stares at the fire in Hannah's house. When she doesn't come back, he leaves. Meanwhile, Hannah sees a procession of cars and decides to follow. She ends up at Esther Greeley's house. The old lady recently passed away and the funeral was happening right when Hannah arrived. Esther's husband thanks her for the interview she made and Hannah goes to say goodbye to Esther. She tells Esther that she hopes she comes back as her granddaughter's kitty, as she wished, and asks her to say goodbye to Hunter for her. After that, she runs to her car, determined to find Andrew and make amends. Seeing Esther dead reminded her of life and that she needs to let go of Hunter and start her own life. At this time, Andrew is already leaving town, but Hannah manages to reach him. She tries to catch his attention, but Andrew isn't paying attention. A few moments pass until he finally sees her waving her arms like crazy to catch his attention. She asks him to stop the car and he does. They stand face to face, staring at each other in silence for a moment, until Hannah approaches him. She smiles at him, and without words, she shows what she's feeling for him. Then, they finally kiss.